Eruption, known today as the Toba supervolcano, unleashed more energy than any nuclear arsenal humans would ever build. It sent ash high into the stratosphere, blotting out the sun, cooling the air, and plunging the planet into one of the coldest ages in human history. Across the continents, sunlight dimmed. Days seemed like twilight. Plants failed to grow, animals collapsed in hunger, and humans, the fragile hunters scattered in small bands, found themselves standing on the edge of extinction. The numbers are staggering. From genetic evidence, scientists believe that our entire species may have shrunk to fewer than 10,000 individuals. Imagine that. All of humanity reduced to a population smaller than a modern town. Every person alive today is descended from those few who clung to life in the shadows of ice and ash. For them, survival was not certain. It was a battle fought every single sunrise, against forces far greater than themselves. The climate grew merciless. Grasslands turned barren, frozen under thick layers of snow. Rivers froze solid. Herds of mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, and steppe bison moved endlessly, searching for patches of vegetation that might still remain. Where the animals went, humans followed, not as masters of nature, but as beggars at its table. They were hungry, cold, and exposed. In that desperate pursuit, they became both predators and prey. To understand their world, strip away the comforts of ours. No cities, no electricity, no medicine. You own nothing but what you can carry in your hands. The cold bites through every layer of hide you wrap around your shoulders. Food spoils or freezes before you can eat it. A storm can sweep away your shelter in an instant. And every night when the fire grows low, the darkness presses in. You know that something waits beyond the reach of the flames, wolves, lions, or worse. Your survival depends not on strength alone, but on the will to endure when all logic says you should surrender. Entire lineages vanished in this age. Entire branches of the human family refused to give up. Nomads moved endlessly, following the great herds across a white and hostile desert. Each migration was a gamble. To travel meant exposure to storms that could strip the skin from your face. To stay meant certain starvation. Mothers carried infants wrapped in animal skins. Fathers dragged sleds piled with whatever meager possessions they could hold. Children learned too soon the meaning of hunger and fear. In the freezing wind, every step was survival purchased with pain. Picture the silence of their nights. The snow muffles every sound, except the crackle of a tiny fire. The stars are brilliant, but offer no warmth. You sit with your family, pressed close together, trying to breathe shallow to save energy. Hunger gnaws at your stomach, but nothing grows, nothing stirs beyond the frozen horizon. Then you hear it, a low rumble, the padding of heavy feet in the darkness. Something watches, drawn by the scent of your fear. In moments like these, survival feels impossible. Yet somehow they endured. Their numbers were few, their tools crude, their shelters fragile, but within them burned a determination that outlasted the storms. With each passing year they learned more, where to find refuge, how to preserve what little food remained, how to cling to life even as the ice closed in around them. This is the story of the first great trial humanity ever faced. And yet, as terrible as it was, as close as it brought us to annihilation, the greatest challenge had not yet begun. The truth is, the world still held even more merciless tests in store. The cold was only the beginning. The real struggle for survival, the innovations, the communities, the mysteries that would define our species, was waiting just ahead. But the greatest trial was still to come. The ice spread like a slow and merciless tide. Vast glaciers advanced across the northern continents, burying valleys, grinding down mountains, and sealing entire regions under hundreds of meters of frozen weight. For those who lived through it, the earth itself must have seemed to turn hostile. Forests that once fed herds of deer vanished beneath storms that erased the landscape in blinding white. Entire families would set out, carrying little more than stone tools, bundles of fur, and the desperate hope that beyond the horizon lay a place where food could still be found. Many never arrived, but those who did discovered a fragile lifeline. Here, in these refuges, humans and animals were drawn together by the same necessity. Mammoths grazed the meadows, scraping snow aside with their tusks to reach buried grass. Horses and bison moved in restless herds, never staying long in one place, always searching for the next patch of life. People watched them closely, learned their patterns, and followed their trails. The animals were not only food, they were guides, showing the way to water, to shelter, to survival itself. But following the herds was a dangerous bargain. To hunt them was perilous, to lose them was fatal. Imagine a small band of hunters, men and women together, children carried on hips, moving step by step behind a herd of reindeer. Each day they lag farther behind, struggling through snowdrifts, starving as their prey outpaces them. One wrong turn, one storm too fierce, and the herd disappears into the distance. Hunger follows. Death is never far behind. And yet, within these desperate migrations, there was resilience. Families huddled together under makeshift shelters of wood and bone. They stitched hides into crude cloaks, shared every scrap of marrow cracked from frozen bones, and whispered stories by the flicker of firelight to keep despair at bay. Survival was not just physical, it was psychological. To believe there was still hope, to imagine a tomorrow where the sun might rise warm again, was itself an act of endurance. In the refuges, small groups encountered one another. Sometimes they clashed, competing for hunting grounds, defending what little food remained. But sometimes they joined forces. A larger group meant more eyes to watch the herds, more hands to build shelter, more voices to sing against the silence of the cold. These alliances were fragile, yet they planted the seeds of something that would later define us: community. Still, the refuges were no paradise. Starvation stalked them. Disease spread quickly through cramped shelters. Predator, our story would have ended. But nature leaves cracks, and in those cracks, life clings on. The Iberian coastlines, the Italian valleys, the Balkan mountains, they became crucibles of survival, where tiny sparks of humanity burned against the dark. From these places, the future of our species would rise. And yet, though these sanctuaries offered shelter, they could not erase the truth. The struggle was far from over. Survival here was only the beginning. The question was not simply whether humans could endure the cold, but whether they could adapt enough to thrive in it. What would separate those who lived from those who vanished? What secret advantages would carry one lineage forward while another fell into extinction? The refuges gave humanity a chance, but chance alone would not be enough. To endure the centuries of ice ahead, something more would be required: new skills, new alliances, and innovations that would change the very destiny of our species. And so, as the ice thickened and the herds moved ever farther, three humankinds faced the test together: Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, and Denisovan, different, yet bound by the same question. Who would master this frozen world? The answer would decide the future of humanity. As the Ice Age deepened, humanity was not alone. Across the frozen continents, different branches of the human family walked the same perilous ground. They looked similar. They shared the same struggles, but they were not the same. To survive, each carried unique strengths, unique weaknesses, and only time would reveal who would endure. The Cro-Magnon, our direct ancestors, were newcomers in Europe. Born in Africa, they carried with them a long tradition of adaptability. Their bodies were lean, built for endurance, able to walk for days in pursuit of game. Their minds were restless, always searching for better tools, better shelters, better ways to communicate. They were, in many ways, fragile, less muscular than their cousins, less suited to the crushing cold. But they were innovators, and innovation became their shield. The Neanderthals had been in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years before Cro-Magnon ever set foot there. They were children of the cold, sculpted by Denisovans carried genes that gave later generations the ability to breathe thin air at high altitudes, genes still found today in the peoples of Tibet. They were hardy, resilient, perhaps as skilled as their Neanderthal cousins, but their world was shadowed. Much about them remains unknown. Did they sing songs? Did they paint? Did they dream of gods in the night sky? We may never know. For a time, all three kinds of humans coexisted. Imagine the frozen plains of Europe and Asia not as a lonely wasteland, but as a crossroads of peoples. A Cro-Magnon band tracking reindeer might encounter Neanderthals at the mouth of a cave. Would they trade? Would they fight? Or would they watch each other from a distance, recognizing in the other a mirror of themselves, different, yet hauntingly familiar? The evidence suggests moments of both conflict and connection. Bones reveal wounds from violent encounters, skulls shattered by blows. Yet DNA reveals something more intimate. These groups did not only clash, they mingled. Neanderthal genes flow in every human alive today outside of Africa. Denisovan genes live on in the peoples of Asia and the Pacific. They did not vanish entirely. Part of them survives in us. Still, survival was never guaranteed. The frozen world demanded more than strength, more than courage. It demanded innovation. Around small fires, people began to invent ways to endure. Neanderthals refined their stone tools, shaping them with skill and precision. Cro-Magnon experimented with new forms of blades, new methods of hafting tools to wood and bone. Denisovans, though hidden from us in mystery, must have crafted their own solutions to the merciless cold. And within these groups, society itself began to take shape. Hunting required cooperation. Caring for children demanded patience. Sharing food meant trust. Slowly, the bonds of family stretched into something larger. The beginnings of tribes. A man might not only guard his own child, but also the child of another. A woman might share her gathered roots with a hunter who brought back nothing that day. In the ice, generosity was not weakness. It was survival. But these early humans were more than just survivors. Thousands of years, these humankinds lived side by side. They were rivals, but also kin. Their destinies intertwined, their legacies mixed. In time, only one would remain to tell the story. But in this moment of the Ice Age, the world belonged not to one, but to all of them. And as the glaciers pressed down harder, survival meant more than finding food or shelter. It meant taking risks. It meant daring to hunt the giants of the tundra, the mammoths. Creatures that could feed an entire band for weeks, but that could also crush hunters underfoot. To bring down such a beast required not just strength, but strategy, courage, and unity. The age of mammoth hunters was about to begin. To survive the Ice Age, humans had to gamble with giants. Among the frozen herds that wandered the steppe, no creature loomed larger than the woolly mammoth. Standing 12 feet at the shoulder, weighing as much as 6 tons, with tusks curving like ivory scythes, a single mammoth carried enough meat, fat, and bone to feed dozens of people for weeks. To kill one was to earn life. To fail was to meet death. For Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon alike, the mammoth was both a prize and a terror. No hunter could bring it down alone. Cooperation was not optional. It was the only path to success. Bands of men and women gathered, planned, and waited for the right moment. The mammoth's strength was overwhelming, its hide thick, its rage unstoppable. But humans had something else: strategy. They studied the herds. They watched from ridges as mammoths dug through snow with tusks, as calves clung to their mothers, as the elders limped on swollen joints. They learned to see not just a wall of beasts, but opportunity. A wounded mammoth, an old bull, a calf separated from its herd. These were the weak points. Humans chose carefully, for one mistake could scatter the hunters, trample the brave, and end the hunt in blood. When the moment came, the attack was sudden. Spears tipped with stone points, hardened in fire, thrust from all sides. Some hunters shouted, waving torches to drive the beast into a trap. Others dug pits or guided the animal toward weapons and ornaments. Children gorged themselves. Elders regained strength. And, for a brief moment, the cold seemed less cruel. Around those fires, laughter returned. Stories were told of the hunt, tales of bravery, songs of survival. These feasts were not just meals. They were victories, moments when humans felt, perhaps for the first time, that they could command the world around them. But not every hunt ended in triumph. Many ended in disaster. Bones tell us of crushed hunters, ribs shattered, skulls caved in. A single misstep could mean a mammoth breaking free, trampling everything in its path, scattering hunters into the snow. Entire families could be wiped out in a single failed attempt. The risk was immense. The cost was brutal. But the alternative, starvation, was worse. Over time, the hunt became ritual. It demanded planning, courage, and trust. Each hunter relied on the others. Each risked their life for the survival of the group. In these hunts, bonds were forged stronger than blood. To stand together against a mammoth was to declare, "We are more than fragile apes. We are a force." The mammoth shaped human culture. Its bones built shelters, its hides clothed bodies, its fat fueled lamps, its meat sustained life. In a sense, mammoths became the foundation of survival, as important as fire itself. And so, to kill a mammoth was not only an act of necessity, it was an act of identity. It defined what it meant to be human in the Ice Age, a creature too weak alone, but unstoppable together. Archaeologists have found circles of mammoth bones arranged like walls, remnants of shelters built on frozen plains. They have uncovered caches of mammoth skulls, perhaps trophies, perhaps sacred offerings. To our ancestors, these animals were not merely prey. They were rivals, symbols of both terror and salvation. Each hunt was a confrontation with nature itself, and each victory a declaration of defiance against the cold. For Cro-Magnon, the hunt refined their greatest strength, adaptability. They experimented with traps, with courage and muscle. They would need something revolutionary. The cold was merciless, but humans were learning to bend it to their will. They were about to discover tools and powers that would change the course of history forever. You may think fire is simple, a spark, a flame. But in the Ice Age, fire was nothing less than the difference between life and extinction. Fire. To us, it is ordinary, a flick of a switch, a spark from a lighter, a blue flame on a stove. We take it for granted. But to our ancestors in the Ice Age, fire was nothing less than a miracle. It was light in the endless dark, warmth in the merciless cold, protection against the beasts of the night. It was survival, distilled into flame. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans feared fire as much as they desired it. They saw it in the lightning that split the sky, in the glow of volcanoes, in wild forest blazes that devoured everything in their path. It was dangerous, uncontrollable, untouchable. But slowly, carefully, humans learned to steal it. They carried embers from fallen trees, guarded them through the night, kept them smoldering in bundles of bark and moss. A single glowing coal could mean the difference between life and death. Then came the greater revolution, the ability to create fire at will, to strike stone against stone, to coax sparks into flame, to breathe life into smoke until it roared. Archaeologists debate when and how this mastery began, but its impact is undeniable. The first controlled flames were more powerful than any spear, more vital than any shelter. They marked the beginning of humanity's dominance over the elements. In the Ice Age, fire was a fortress. Families huddled around it in caves, watching sparks rise into the blackness. The flames pushed back the dark, held predators at bay, and gave humans something no other creature had: nights not ruled by fear. Imagine the relief of knowing that wolves would not cross the glowing circle of your fire, that cave lions would linger outside, their eyes glowing but their bodies unwilling to approach. Fire was not just heat. It was safety. But fire did more than protect. It transformed food. Raw meat once to culture. Fire was the first classroom, and its glow the first chalkboard. But fire was also power. With it, humans could reshape the world. They burned landscapes to drive animals into traps, clearing forests to create grasslands for grazing herds. They hardened wooden spears in flame, making them deadly. They lit torches to carry into the unknown, venturing into caves that no other creature dared to enter. Fire extended the human realm beyond daylight, giving them mastery over time itself. Yet mastery was fragile. A single storm could extinguish a flame. A careless moment could let embers die. For Ice Age families, guarding fire was a sacred duty. Children learned to blow gently on sparks, to feed flames with dry twigs, to shield them from the wind. Entire journeys were planned around carrying fire, preserving it as if it were a living creature that demanded care. Because in truth it was. Without fire, humans were prey again, naked against the cold. Consider for a moment how fire reshaped the rhythm of life. Before its mastery, nights were short, ruled by fear. With fire, nights became long, filled with talk, with laughter, with planning. Dreams could be spoken aloud, ideas shared, songs sung. Fire stretched the day, gave humans more hours, and in those hours, civilization began to take root. Every human alive today carries an ancient memory of fire. The comfort we feel staring into a campfire, the calm of a glowing hearth, the fascination with candles in the dark. These are echoes of survival, instincts passed down through thousands of generations. We are drawn to fire because once it drew the line between life and death. In the frozen world of the Ice Age, fire was the greatest invention, the most vital discovery, the tool that transformed our species. But it was not the only one. As the centuries passed, humans would learn to build not just warmth but shelter, to create homes where fire could burn safely, where families could gather, where storms could be shut out. The mammoth gave them food and bone. Fire gave them power. The next step was to learn to shape the world into walls and roofs, to engineer safety in the midst of chaos. Raised walls. Skulls and tusks became arches. Ribs became beams, covered with hides stitched together by sinew. These strange houses dotted the plains of Eastern Europe and Siberia, circles of ivory rising against the snow. Inside, families huddled around fires, smoke curling through holes in the roof. The bones of giants became the bones of homes. Archaeologists today still uncover their remnants, rings of tusks, piles of ribs, traces of ancient hearths. They are monuments to ingenuity, evidence that even in the harshest age, humans found ways to create space, to carve out belonging. Not all shelters were so grand. Sometimes, branches and hides stretched over poles were enough to form a tent against the wind. Sometimes, snow itself became protection, packed into walls that trapped heat inside. The Ice Age was a teacher, and its lessons were brutal. Build well or perish. A poorly made shelter could mean death in the first blizzard of winter. A strong one could keep a family alive until spring. Inside these shelters, life took shape. Fires burned steadily, casting flickering shadows on bone walls. Families shared meals, repaired tools, told stories. Children played in the glow of flames, while elders stitched hides into clothing. These were not just shelters. They were homes. For the first time in human history, the idea of indoors existed. The knowledge that outside was deathly cold, but inside was warmth, community, and survival. Clothing, too, became shelter. From the hides of reindeer and bison, humans crafted coats, leggings, and boots. Needles made of bone stitched furs together, turning animals into armor against the cold. Each stitch was survival, each thread a barrier against frostbite. Wrapped in these garments, hunters could range farther, endure longer, chase herds across frozen plains without succumbing to the elements. Clothing extended the reach of humanity, making the uninhabitable just a little more forgiving. Shelter was more than protection. It was identity. The construction of homes reflected the creativity of the humans could point and say, "Here is our place. This is where we live. This is where we endure." Think of the contrast. Outside, the Ice Age howled, relentless and cruel. Inside, fire crackled, voices rose, laughter echoed. The world beyond the walls was vast and merciless, but inside the shelter, humanity was carving out a world of its own. Each home was a rebellion against extinction, a small fortress of hope in the frozen dark. Archaeologists who walk among the ruins of these shelters today see more than bones and ash. They see the spark of engineering, the beginning of architecture. They see proof that humans were no longer at the mercy of nature alone. They were learning to bend it, to reshape it, to build against it. The shelters of the Ice Age were not castles, but they were foundations, precursors to every house, every temple, every city that would come. The shelters tell us something profound. Survival is not only about strength or courage. It is about creating spaces where life can continue, where children can grow, where memory can persist. Shelters were wombs of culture, incubators of resilience, and in them, humans became more than wanderers. They became dwellers. Yet even the strongest shelter could not provide food. A roof could keep out snow, but not hunger. To endure the long winters, humans needed more than walls and clothing. They needed to conquer scarcity itself. They needed to learn how to preserve life in the absence of plenty. The secret of survival would not only be what you hunted today, but what you could save for tomorrow. The age of preservation was about to begin. Shelter could keep out the snow. Fire could chase away the darkness. But no wall and no flame could erase hunger. In the Ice Age, food was life, and it was always uncertain. Herds moved, plants withered, storms destroyed every chance to hunt. To survive not just a night, not just a week, but an entire season, humans had to learn a new skill: how to preserve the bounty of today for the famine of tomorrow. At first, preservation was instinctive. Hunters discovered that meat left in the snow did not rot. The ice itself was a storage chest, a natural freezer. Roots, nuts and berries during the rare months when the earth thawed. These treasures were stored in pits, sometimes lined with stone, sometimes sealed with hide. Some were buried deep, hidden from animals, cached for the desperate months of winter. To stumble upon such a cache could mean survival for an entire family. To lose it could mean death. Fishing, too, brought new methods. In icy rivers, humans learned to trap fish, sometimes freezing them solid and storing them beneath snow. A frozen fish was not a meal for today, but it could be one for tomorrow or the day after. The ice itself became both enemy and ally, killing the unprepared, but saving those who knew how to use it. These techniques demanded foresight. They required planning, patience, and trust. A single hunter might kill enough for a feast, but without preservation, that bounty would rot within days. Only by thinking beyond the moment, by saving instead of consuming, could humans endure. It was an evolution not just of skill, but of mindset. Preservation taught humans to look ahead, to imagine a future, to prepare for it even when the present was desperate. The lesson was cruel, but clear. Eat everything now, and you may not see spring. Save, ration, preserve, and you may outlast the storm. In this way, food preservation shaped not just survival, but society. Families learned to share responsibility, to guard the stored food, to distribute it carefully. Greed or waste could doom everyone. Discipline could save them all. Preservation also deepened the role of fire. No longer just warmth or protection, it became a tool for chemistry. The transformation of raw flesh into smoked meat, the drying of strips over low embers, the sealing of hides with heat. These were the beginnings of human mastery over nature's processes. Without knowing the science, they practiced it. They experimented, discovered, refined. Failure taught lessons as sharp as hunger. Success meant survival. Even bones became part of this equation. Marrow, rich in fat, was prized. Hunters learned to crack bones and save the marrow in frozen storage, a dense packet of energy that could last and dream. Preservation was not only about food, it was about the birth of long-term thinking. And yet, even the best stored food could not last forever. Rot found its way into caches. Predators raided storage pits. Accidents destroyed reserves. To truly thrive, humans needed more than hidden meat and frozen fish. They needed better tools, new materials, and constant innovation. The Ice Age demanded it. The cold was relentless, and every discovery was fragile. Without change, without invention, the lessons of preservation would not be enough. The next step in survival was to build beyond instinct, beyond tradition, into technology itself. The age of tools was dawning, and with it humanity would take another leap toward becoming masters of the frozen world. Survival in the Ice Age demanded more than courage, more than strength. It demanded invention. Every hunt, every shelter, every preserved scrap of food was made possible not just by instinct, but by tools. To endure, humans became makers. And in that transformation, they began to separate themselves from the animals around them. For hundreds of thousands of years, stones had been shaped into crude edges. A sharp flake could cut, a jagged point could pierce. But as the Ice Age pressed harder, those edges grew more precise. Hunters chipped stone with care, striking at just the right angle, shaving away slivers until blades emerged, thin, sharp, and deadly. Flint became the steel of the prehistoric world, its edges sharper than even modern scalpels. With it, hunters carved hides, butchered carcasses, and shaped wood into spears. These were not accidents. They were acts of intention. To craft a blade required vision, the ability to see not what the stone was, but what it could be. Each strike carried knowledge, passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. A child who learned to strike stone correctly inherited more than skill. They inherited survival. From bone and antler came new tools. A shard of rib became a scraper to clean hides. A length of antler became a hammer for shaping flint. Most revolutionary of all, slender bones were carved into needles. With them, from shells, pendants of ivory drilled with holes. These objects were not weapons or tools for survival. They were symbols, perhaps of identity, perhaps of belief, perhaps of beauty itself. They remind us that even at the edge of extinction, humans created more than what was necessary. They created meaning. But every tool carried risk. Stone could break, rope could snap. A spear that failed at the wrong moment could cost a life. Innovation was a cycle of trial and error, of failure and refinement. Each mistake was painful, but each success was powerful. Slowly, technology became humanity's armor against the cold, a shield against extinction. The true strength of these technologies was not just in their making, but in their sharing. One person's discovery became the tribe's inheritance. Skills were passed along not only by demonstration, but by words, gestures, even symbols. In this way, technology became the first language humanity spoke together, not of sounds, but of actions, of ideas made solid in stone and bone. The result was exponential. Each generation added to the knowledge of the last. Where animals relied only on instinct, humans built on memory. A mammoth's tusk might become a spear tip sharper than any claw. A strip of hide might become a rope stronger than sinew alone. With each invention, the gap widened. Humans were no longer just another species struggling to survive. They were becoming something else, a species that reshaped the world to fit their needs. This was the dawn of technology, and it would change everything. The shelters would grow stronger, the clothes would grow warmer, the hunts would grow deadlier, and with each step forward, humanity would move farther from the brink of extinction, closer to the future that awaited. But the lesson of technology was not only progress, it was humility. Tools alone could not save a person wandering alone in the snow. A needle without hands to use it, a blade without hunters to wield it, a rope without a group to pull it. These were nothing. The Ice Age was teaching its harshest truth. Survival was never a solitary achievement, not possible without cooperation. One person could never face a beast of 6 tons, but 10, 20, 30 working together, driving the animal into marshes, circling with torches, thrusting spears in unison, could turn the impossible into reality. Unity made giants fall. Inside the shelters, unity mattered just as much. One hunter might return empty-handed, but another might bring food. Without sharing, half would starve while half survived. But by pooling resources, by dividing meals, by ensuring that even the weakest mouths tasted meat, the tribe endured. Generosity was not charity, it was insurance. Tomorrow the roles might reverse. Caring for the young too became a collective task. The child was not raised only by its mother, but by the group. Elders watched over infants, older children tended fires, hunters protected them all. This system of shared responsibility allowed humans to grow, to multiply, to pass on knowledge. The survival of children was not luck alone, it was community. Even in grief, community mattered. When sickness struck or storms took lives, the tribe mourned together. They buried their dead, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with tools placed carefully beside the body. These acts bound the living to the lost, reminding them that even in death, they were not alone. Grief shared was grief endured. In numbers, humans found safety. A wolf pack might circle a lone wanderer, but a band of hunters could turn predators into prey. Cave lions might stalk a single fire, but when dozens of voices rose in defiance, the lions retreated. The Ice Age was filled with dangers, but it also offered a lesson written in every frozen wind. Stand alone and perish. Stand together and survive. This cooperation was not accidental. It demanded trust. It demanded rules. Groups learned to divide labor. Hunters, gatherers, toolmakers, firekeepers, caregivers. Each role mattered, and each person knew it. The tribe functioned like a living organism, stronger than the sum of its parts. In the cold, selfishness could kill everyone. In unity, survival became possible. The power of numbers extended beyond the hunt and the shelter. It forged identity. To belong to a tribe was to have a name. Firelight inside a mammoth bone shelter. Outside, the wind howls. Wolves prowl in the dark. Snow presses against the walls. But inside, children laugh as an elder tells a story. Hunters share roasted meat, passing bones hand to hand. A woman stitches a coat, her needle clicking in the flicker of flames. There is fear, yes, but also comfort, strength, belonging. This is humanity's greatest weapon, the tribe. Other creatures gathered in groups. Wolves hunted in packs, mammoths moved in herds. But humans took cooperation further. They did not simply move together. They thought together, planned together, dreamed together. They divided roles, shared knowledge, cared for the sick and the weak. This capacity for deep cooperation is what set them apart. It was not claws or strength or speed. It was trust, woven into the fabric of survival. The Ice Age taught humanity that survival was never guaranteed, but it also taught that together, the impossible could be made possible. Each person carried the others. Each life was tied to the whole. The tribe was more than protection. It was identity. It was meaning. And so, as the centuries passed, humans began to pass not only food and shelter, but something even more powerful: knowledge, ideas, stories, skills. They became the glue that bound one generation to the next. The tribe gave humans strength in numbers, but knowledge would give them immortality. Strength in numbers gave humanity a shield, but knowledge gave them a sword. To hunt together, to build together, to survive together was not enough unless the lessons of survival could be remembered and passed on. Knowledge was the invisible thread tying the past to the future, the force that allowed humans to grow stronger with every generation. In the Ice Age, knowledge was not stored in books or carved in stone. It lived in the minds of people, in the words they spoke, in the gestures they shared. Around the fire, elders taught children how to chip flint, how to track a reindeer, how to recognize the signs of a storm. Each story carried instruction. Each song carried memory. In this way, the tribe itself became a library, and the people its pages. Language was still upon layer, growing into something vast and powerful. But knowledge was more than technique. It was also imagination. People remembered the paths of herds, mapping the land not with ink but with memory. They carried mental maps of rivers, valleys, and mountains, teaching them to the next generation. They remembered which caves stayed dry, which shelters collapsed, which waters froze late in the season. With these maps, they expanded their reach, moving farther, faster, more confidently. Knowledge also created culture. Stories told by firelight were more than entertainment. They were guides. A tale of a hunter who ignored the wisdom of the elders and perished in a storm carried a lesson: respect experience. A song of gratitude to the mammoth honored not just the animal, but the idea that survival required respect for nature. These narratives shaped behavior, united tribes, and gave meaning to hardship. And slowly, art emerged as another form of memory. Scratches on cave walls became symbols. Handprints pressed against stone became signatures of existence, messages across time. We were here. We lived. We endured. Some of the earliest carvings may have been tallies, marks to count days, seasons, or animals. These were the seeds of writing, though they would not bloom fully for tens of thousands of years. Still, the impulse was there, to record, to remember, to leave behind a trace. In this way, knowledge became more than survival. It became identity. To be human was to learn, to teach, to remember. Each person was not just an individual struggling against the cold, but a link in a chain stretching backward and forward. Each lesson mastered, each story told, each word spoken, ensured that the chain remained unbroken. But knowledge was also power. A tribe that knew how to preserve meat, how to build strong shelters, how to fashion sharper blades could outlast one that did not. Groups began to differ not only in strength but in wisdom. The best ideas spread as people traveled, traded, and mingled. The worst ideas vanished with those who failed. Gone, passing them to descendants not yet born. This ability, more than fire, more than shelter, more than tools, was the real game changer. It made humanity timeless. With knowledge, humans no longer faced the Ice Age as scattered bands of fragile bodies. They faced it as a species bound together by memory. Each person carried more than their own experience. They carried the lives of countless others who had come before. And with this gift, they were ready for the next step. For survival was not only about learning from each other. It was also about sharing beyond the tribe, about connecting across distances, about weaving humanity into something larger than a single band of wanderers. Knowledge gave humans the power to survive. But knowledge locked inside one tribe was fragile, easily lost with a storm, a famine, or the death of elders. To endure fully, humanity needed something greater, the sharing of ideas, goods, and skills between groups. And so, in the frozen world of the Ice Age, the first sparks of trade began to glow. Trade was not born in markets or cities. It began with simple exchanges, gestures of mutual survival. A hunter from one band carried a piece of obsidian, black volcanic glass sharper than any flint. Another band, living far from volcanoes, had never seen such stone. In return, they offered shells gathered from a distant coast, gleaming with beauty unknown to the hunter. Neither item could fill an empty stomach, but both carried value. Value not of calories, but of meaning. Objects began to move across landscapes carried from hand to hand, tribe to tribe. Obsidian from faraway mountains has been found thousands of miles from its source. Shells from the sea appeared deep inland, in caves where no ocean could be seen. These artifacts are silent witnesses to networks of connection, proof that even in the harshest of times, humans reached beyond their borders to touch one another. The trade was more than objects. It was ideas. A new way to chip stone, a technique for sewing hides, a method of trapping fish, all could be shared, borrowed, adapted. Each meeting between groups became a chance for innovation to spread. The tribe that humanity began to stitch itself together into something larger than scattered families. Why did they trade? Some items carried practical value, stone for tools, hides for warmth. But others carried symbolic power. Shells, beads, carved ivory pendants, objects of beauty that could not feed or warm a person. Why risk life to carry them across frozen plains? Because humans craved more than survival. They craved meaning, status, identity. A shell around the neck, a bead on a wrist, a pendant carved with care. These were markers of belonging, of memory, of beauty in a brutal world. In this sense, trade was also communication. It spoke without words. We were here. We are connected. Objects carried stories, reminders of distant lands and distant people. They carried proof that even in isolation, humans were part of something larger. Trade also brought danger. Strangers carried not only goods, but conflict. A peaceful exchange could sour into theft, rivalry, or bloodshed. Groups had to weigh risk against reward, deciding when to trust and when to fight. Yet over time, the benefits outweighed the dangers. Those who connected thrived. Those who remained alone risked vanishing. These networks of exchange were fragile, shifting, temporary. But they laid the foundation for what would one day become roads, caravans, ships, and empires. They were the first threads in the web of globalization that now binds billions of people together. In their small way, Ice Age traders were the pioneers of a connected world. And with exchange came something even deeper, the beginnings of shared culture. Objects moved, but so did ideas of ritual, of story, of belief. A carved figure might hold sacred meaning in one group, and when carried to another, it spread that meaning farther. Slowly, across frozen valleys and snowbound forests, humans began to share not only survival strategies, but symbols of the spirit. For survival alone could not explain why people risked meeting strangers, why they carried useless beauty across deadly landscapes. Something more powerful was awakening within the human mind. The hunger for connection, for significance, for faith. Trade built bridges of trust. Belief would build bridges of meaning. The answers came not in science, but in ritual. Burials from the Ice Age reveal something extraordinary. Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon alike placed their dead with care. bodies were covered in ochre, a red pigment like the color of blood and life. Flowers were laid on graves, antlers arranged beside skulls, tools placed near hands. These gestures tell us that death was not seen as the end, but as a passage. The dead were honored, accompanied into another realm. In these rituals, belief was born. Perhaps the spirits of animals lingered, perhaps ancestors watched over the living, perhaps gods or forces guided the hunt and the harvest. Whatever form it took, faith gave meaning to suffering. It turned chaos into story, despair into purpose. When storms destroyed shelters or famine took children, belief gave words to grief, hope to the hopeless. Art was also part of this awakening. Deep in caves, humans painted animals with stunning detail. Herds of bison, galloping horses, mighty mammoths. These were not decorations, they were visions, prayers, acts of magic. To paint a mammoth on the wall was perhaps to summon its spirit, to ensure a successful hunt, to connect with powers beyond the visible. The flicker of firelight made the animals move, as if alive, as if dancing with the hunters who sought them. Small figurines carved from ivory and stone also appeared. The Venus statues, with wide hips and full bodies. To us, they are works of art. To them, they may have been symbols of fertility, of life continuing in a world that tried to end it. Holding such a figure, a woman might find hope for safe childbirth. A man might pray for the survival of his family. These statues were more than carvings. They were vessels of belief. Spiritual life was not a luxury of abundance. It was a necessity of survival. Belief united tribes, gave them shared rituals, bonded them in common purpose. To sing together before a hunt, to bury the dead with care, to paint the walls of caves, these were acts of community as much as faith. They reminded people that they were part of something larger, something that endured even when individuals did not. The world was far from finished with them. Beyond the rituals and the songs, another mystery loomed. The greatest question of the Ice Age was not only how humans survived, but why some did not. One of our closest cousins, the Neanderthals, strong and skilled, vanished forever. Their disappearance remains one of the deepest enigmas of human history, and the answer to their fate would shape the destiny of us all. For more than 300,000 years, the Neanderthals ruled the cold lands of Europe. They were masters of the hunt, children of the ice, their bodies sculpted for survival in a frozen world. With barrel chests and thick limbs, they could endure what would kill others. Their spears were sturdy, their shelters strong. They lived through storms that would have buried weaker species in silence. For ages, it seemed nothing could erase them. And yet, they vanished. Somewhere between 40 and 30,000 years ago, the Neanderthals disappeared from the earth. Not suddenly, not all at once, but slowly, until the last of their kind faded into memory. Their bones remained, but their voices, their stories, their songs were lost. The question that has haunted us ever since is simple and profound. Why them and not us? Some say it was the climate. As the Ice Age grew harsher, the lands they knew best changed beyond recognition. Forests they hunted in shrank, replaced by frozen tundra. Animals they relied on vanished or moved. Perhaps their powerful bodies, once their greatest advantage, became their weakness. They required more calories, more meat, more fuel to keep warm. When the land grew poor, they starved. The Cro-Magnon, leaner, more adaptable, needed less and survived on more varied food. Others believe it was competition. The arrival of Cro-Magnon in Europe brought a new rival, fast, inventive, cooperative. Where Neanderthals hunted with brute force, Cro-Magnon built traps, used lighter tools, planned ambushes. Where Neanderthals lived in smaller groups, Cro-Magnon gathered in larger bands. In a world of scarcity, even small advantages connection. Still, the Neanderthals are gone. Their faces no longer walk the earth, except through echoes in our genes. What was lost with them? Did they have songs we will never hear, stories never told, art never painted? Archaeological traces suggest they cared for their sick, buried their dead, crafted tools with skill, perhaps even decorated themselves with feathers and pigments. They were not brutes. They were human in every way that matters. Their disappearance is not just a mystery. It is a tragedy. And yet, it is also a reminder. Survival is never guaranteed. Strength alone does not ensure endurance. Intelligence alone does not promise success. In the frozen crucible of the Ice Age, countless lineages vanished. We remained, not because we were destined to, but because we adapted, connected, and, perhaps, because we were lucky. The extinction of the Neanderthals warns us that no species is eternal, not even our own. They endured for hundreds of thousands of years, far longer than modern civilization has yet existed, and still, they fell. When we ask why them and not us, we are also asking, how long will we endure? Their absence left a space, and into that space Cro-Magnon expanded. The world grew emptier, yet in that emptiness, our ancestors spread across Europe, carrying not only their tools and shelters, but the shadows of their lost cousins within their very blood. The Neanderthal story is not one of weakness. It is one of survival stretched across millennia, a testament to human resilience in a brutal age. But in the end, resilience was not enough. Adaptation demanded more. And Cro-Magnon carried something the Neanderthals could not, an expanding network of culture, innovation, and connection. That difference proved decisive. The Neanderthals walked with us, hunted with us, loved with us. Then they were gone. Yet in every face alive today, traces of them remain. Their extinction is not only their story, it is ours. But the story of survival was still not secure. Even Cro-Magnon, even the adaptable, faced catastrophe. For at one point in our history, estimates place the number as low as 2,000 or 3,000. Imagine that, an entire species, all of humanity, smaller than a modern town. Every human alive today descends from those survivors. Every heartbeat you hear, every breath you take, is linked to the fragile persistence of that tiny group. Why did it happen? The Ice Age was merciless. Glaciers advanced, sea levels fell, ecosystems collapsed. Volcanic eruptions like Toba may have poisoned the skies and dimmed the sun for years. Famine stalked the land. Predators roamed unchecked. Diseases spread where families huddled too close. Entire groups perished, leaving no descendants. But not all were lost. In small refuges across Africa, Asia, and Europe, scattered families endured. Some clung to coastlines, gathering shellfish and fish when hunting failed. Others hid in valleys where microclimates softened the cold. Still others adapted their diets, learning to eat roots, tubers, or insects when game disappeared. These were not grand victories. They were desperate acts of survival. But they worked, and survival was not random. It left its marks in our genes. The people who lived carried traits that gave them advantages, stronger immune systems, greater resilience to cold, perhaps even more efficient metabolisms. Over generations, these traits spread. The weak perished, the adaptable endured. Slowly, humanity grew strong again, not in numbers at first, but in durability. This genetic bottleneck shaped who we are. It tightened our ancestry, reducing diversity but sharpening certain strengths. It meant that all modern humans share a surprisingly recent common origin. The differences we see today in skin color, hair, facial features are variations built on a foundation laid by that small, desperate band of survivors. We are one family because we came so close to being none at all. The bottleneck also shaped culture. Small groups meant that knowledge had to be passed carefully. Each elder became precious, each story vital. If a single line of wisdom was lost, how to make fire, how to hunt reindeer, how to find water in winter, it could doom an entire family. The fragility of survival made fragility of the need to work together or perish. Those lessons are carved into our nature even now. The irony is that today we number in billions, sprawling across every continent, building cities that glow like constellations at night. And yet, inside us, written into every cell, is the memory of near extinction. We are the children of survivors, heirs of a narrow escape. Without their endurance, there would be no languages, no nations, no art, no dreams. The bottleneck survivors remind us of a truth often forgotten. Survival is not guaranteed. It never was. Our existence is not destiny, but a fragile inheritance. We live because a few thousand people, in a frozen world that wanted them gone, refused to die. And once humanity passed through that eye of the needle, something remarkable happened. Our numbers began to grow. Our tools became sharper, our shelters stronger, our cultures richer. And in the caves of Europe, in the dark where flickering firelight met imagination, humans began to paint. Art was about to bloom in the Ice Age, and with it, the soul of humanity would be revealed. When the struggle for food, fire, and shelter consumed every waking hour, you might think there was no room for anything more. Yet even in the depths of the Ice Age, when survival was never guaranteed, humans created art. On the walls of caves, in carvings of ivory, in the music of bone flutes, something deeper than necessity emerged. They were not only surviving, they were expressing. They were becoming fully human. The caves of Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain hold some of the most breathtaking images ever painted. Horses, bison, mammoths, stags, all leaping, charging, breathing on the walls as if alive. Painted with natural pigments, reds from iron oxide, blacks from charcoal, yellows from ochre, these creatures were more than decoration. They were visions. They may have been prayers for successful hunts, tributes to animals that gave life, or myths brought to life by firelight. When the flames flickered, the animals seemed to move, dancing in the shadows. The cave became a theater of imagination, a cathedral of survival. These images tell us that our ancestors carved their yearning for continuity, for the miracle of new life. Music, too, was born in the Ice Age. In caves in Germany, archaeologists have uncovered flutes made from the bones of birds and mammoths, some over 35,000 years old. Imagine the sound. Thin notes echoing in the dark, weaving through the crackle of fire. These songs carried no calories, no warmth, no shelter. But they carried something else: unity, emotion, transcendence. A song could lift spirits when bellies were empty. A melody could bind a tribe in harmony, giving them strength to endure. Why did humans create art when survival was already so fragile? Because survival is not only about the body, it is about the mind, the spirit, the soul. Art gave meaning to suffering, beauty to despair, hope to hunger. It transformed existence from endurance into experience. To paint, to carve, to sing was to declare, we are more than animals. We are storytellers. We are dreamers. Art also preserved knowledge. A painting of a herd may have been a memory of migration paths. A carved figure may have carried lessons about fertility, growth, or danger. Music may have helped teach rhythm for dance, ritual, or coordination in hunting. These creations were not wasted effort. They were investments in memory, in unity, in identity. The presence of art also shows something else: imagination. To create what is not strictly necessary is to envision what does not yet exist. This ability to imagine, to symbolize, to dream, was perhaps the greatest leap our species ever made. It allowed us to see not only what was, but what could be. In imagination, we rehearsed survival before it happened, planned the hunt before it began, grieved loss before it struck. Art was the rehearsal of humanity itself. And the caves still speak to us today. When we walk into Lascaux or Altamira, we are struck by the same awe our ancestors must have felt. The images leap from the stone, whispering across thousands of years. We were here. We endured. Their resilience, we find the greatest lesson of all. The Ice Age finally loosened its grip. Glaciers melted, rivers swelled, valleys bloomed again with life. But humanity was no longer the same fragile species that had once huddled in caves, clutching fire against the dark. Out of the frozen crucible had emerged something new, something stronger, wiser, more creative. The legacy of those survivors still shapes who we are today. Their story is not only about endurance, it is about transformation. The people who stared into the abyss of extinction did not merely survive. They adapted. They mastered fire, built shelters of bone and hide, learned to preserve food, crafted tools of bone and stone, and above all, they built communities bound by knowledge, trade, and belief. Each step forward was a victory not only over the cold, but over despair. We inherit their lessons in ways we may not notice. The instinct to gather around fire remains with us in campfires, hearths, and candles. The need for shelter echoes in every house and city we build. The hunger to preserve food continues in every pantry, every storehouse, every kitchen. The urge to create technology drives our endless inventions. The bonds of community shape our societies, our families, our nations. And the impulse to believe, to create art, to search for meaning, that is perhaps their greatest gift of all. Their resilience is written in our DNA. The immune systems that defend us, the bodies that endure cold, even the fragments of Neanderthal and Denisovan genes we carry. All are the inheritance of survivors. We are living proof that their struggles were not in vain. Every breath we take is an echo of their triumph over impossible odds. But their story is also a warning. The Neanderthals endured for 300,000 years, and then they vanished. Denisovans left behind little more than fragments of bone and whispers in our genomes. Survival is not destiny. Dominance is not forever. The lesson of the Ice Age is clear. Those who fail to adapt, who fail to connect, who fail to imagine, will be lost. what carried our ancestors through. Survivors. And so, as we look back across 100,000 years, across the frozen landscapes where humanity nearly died, we see not despair, but triumph. We see people who bent, but did not break, who suffered, but did not surrender. We see the dawn of everything we are. We are their legacy. Their strength flows in our blood. Their ideas echo in our minds. Their resilience lives in our spirit. The Ice Age has ended, but its lessons remain. Creativity, teamwork, resilience. These are the pillars of our survival. These are the truths that carried us through the cold, and they are the truths that will decide our future. For we are, all of us, the descendants of the greatest survivors in history, and their story is our story. The Ice Age was more than a backdrop. It was the main force shaping the destiny of humankind. For tens of thousands of years, climate was both tyrant and teacher, pushing our ancestors to the very edge. It sculpted landscapes, erased forests, carved rivers of ice, and turned fertile valleys into deserts of snow. Every choice, every invention, every act of survival was an answer to the question posed by the cold: adapt or die. The power of climate was relentless. Glaciers expanded like armies, advancing mile after mile, crushing everything beneath them. Sea levels fell, exposing vast plains where animals roamed and people followed. Then, with little warning, the ice retreated. Rivers burst forth, floods reshaped valleys, coastlines shifted. What seemed permanent was never fixed. The world was in constant motion, a cycle of freeze and thaw, creation and destruction. For humans, this instability was both curse and opportunity. Entire hunting grounds disappeared overnight, forcing migrations across hundreds of miles. Herds vanished from familiar valleys, driving families into unknown lands. But retreating glaciers also revealed new pastures, new rivers, new coastlines rich with life. The same force that threatened extinction also opened doors to expansion. The evidence lies beneath our feet. Layers of sediment record sudden shifts in temperature, waiting for the world to shift again. Without these last refuges, our story might have ended. But climate's influence went deeper still. It shaped not only our movements, but our minds. Living under constant threat forced humans to think ahead, to plan for winters, to imagine futures beyond the present. The unpredictability of weather made memory precious, teaching us to carry knowledge across generations. The cycles of ice and thaw taught resilience, patience, and humility before forces too vast to control. The Ice Age was not a gentle school. Its lessons were carved into frozen earth, written in hunger and hardship. Yet those lessons forged us. Climate tested us, but it also transformed us, pushing us from fragile primates into problem solvers, storytellers, builders of culture. Even now, long after the glaciers have retreated, we remain shaped by that history. Our bodies still bear traces of adaptation, genes for cold tolerance, immune defenses against Ice Age diseases. Our societies still carry echoes of those lessons: storage, cooperation, long-term planning. The climate that nearly destroyed us also made us who we are. But if climate shaped our survival, it also reminded us of our fragility. We did not conquer the Ice Age. We endured it. And in enduring, we learned that the Earth itself is the most powerful force of all. Yet climate was not the only mystery, for even as glaciers advanced and retreated, another force was at work: hidden, silent, but just as decisive. That force was genetics, the blueprint of survival written within us. The next chapter is not about storms or glaciers. It is about the secrets coded in our blood, the inheritance that allowed some to endure where others could not. The story of survival was not written only in firelight, not only in painted caves or bone shelters. It was also written in blood. Hidden deep within every human alive today are the signatures of the Ice Age, the genetic traces of those who endured when so many others did not. The frozen world shaped not only how our ancestors lived, but who they became. DNA tells us the truth. Modern cold, they became part of the shared inheritance of our species. We are here because those survivors carried within them the right combinations of resilience and luck. Some of these traits shaped our bodies. Genes influencing skin pigmentation shifted as humans moved into northern latitudes, allowing them to absorb more sunlight and produce vitamin D in dark winters. Other genes influenced fat storage, metabolism, and even the way our bodies generate heat. Every shiver, every flush of warmth, every adaptation to cold that we experience today is a whisper from the Ice Age. Genes also shaped our minds. The expansion of brain size, the fine-tuning of neural pathways, the capacity for language and imagination, all were sculpted under the pressure of survival. To plan, to communicate, to dream were not luxuries, they were necessities. Those who could imagine tomorrow were more likely to live to see it. Over time, imagination itself became a survival trait, hardwired into our nature. But genetic inheritance was not simply about adaptation. It was also about fragility. The bottleneck reduced variation, making humanity more vulnerable to certain diseases and weaknesses. Our resilience came at a cost. We carry not only strengths from the Ice Age, but vulnerabilities, remnants of ancient struggles still buried in our code. Even so, the genes of survival tell a remarkable story. We are not the pure descendants of one lineage, but the blended legacy of many. Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, Denisovan, all contributed to the person you are today. When you breathe in cold air and your blood carries oxygen efficiently, when your skin responds to sunlight, when your immune system fights infection, you are living proof of their endurance. This genetic legacy also reminds us of something profound. Extinction is not always absolute. Though Neanderthals and Denisovans disappeared, they did not vanish entirely. Pieces of them walk the earth in us, carried forward in every heartbeat, every breath, every life. Their story did not end. It continues, hidden in our veins. In the Ice Age, survival was a game of chance, but genetics was the scorekeeper. Those who carried the right traits survived long enough to pass them on. Those who did not. And the world we walk today seems unrecognizable compared to that frozen past. Yet, the lessons of the Ice Age are not buried with the bones of our ancestors. They live in us, guiding us still, whispering through the fabric of human history. The first lesson is adaptability. Our ancestors endured not because they were the strongest, but because they were the most flexible. When herds vanished, they shifted their diets. When shelters collapsed, they built new ones. When the climate turned against them, they invented ways to endure. Adaptability became the essence of what it means to be human. And today, as we face our own challenges, changing climates, shifting landscapes, uncertain futures, the same truth remains. Those who adapt will endure. The second lesson is cooperation. Alone, a person could not face the Ice Age. Together, tribes hunted mammoths, built shelters, shared food, and preserved knowledge. Survival depended not on individual strength but on collective unity. That truth has not changed. Our cities, our nations, our global networks are built on the same foundation of shared effort. We are strongest not when we stand apart, but when we stand together. The third lesson is foresight. Preservation of food, creation of tools, passing on knowledge, all demanded the ability to think beyond the present. To survive the Ice Age was to plan for tomorrow, to prepare for seasons yet to come. This gift of foresight became the seed of civilization itself. Today, as we look ahead to challenges that threaten our planet, the same capacity to plan, to anticipate, to act for the future will decide our fate. The fourth lesson is creativity. Caves painted with animals, songs played on bone flutes, carvings of Venus figurines all remind us that survival is not only physical, it is also spiritual. Even in hunger and fear, humans created beauty. Creativity gave meaning to suffering and hope to despair. It elevated existence from mere endurance to something more profound. It made us not just survivors, but dreamers. That impulse still drives us. Every invention, every poem, every story we tell is an echo of those first sparks of imagination in the dark. And the final lesson is resilience. Reminds us how fragile our species once was. The shifting climate of the Ice Age reminds us that the Earth can change faster than we expect. To forget these lessons is to risk repeating history, to risk becoming another story of extinction. And yet to remember them is to carry hope, for the same traits that carried us through the Ice Age remain within us. We are still adaptable. We are still capable of unity. We still dream, still plan, still create. The frozen world forged us into survivors. That legacy is alive in every heartbeat today. As we face our own age of uncertainty, rising seas, changing climates, threats both natural and human-made, we would do well to listen to the voices of the Ice Age. They tell us that survival is possible, even when the world seems hostile. They tell us that the path forward lies not in isolation, but in community. They tell us that creativity and resilience can transform despair into triumph. We are not the first to face crisis. We will not be the last. But if the Ice Age teaches us anything, it is that humanity is capable of more than survival. We are capable of transformation. And from that frozen crucible, one final truth emerges. The story of humanity is not one of defeat, but of endurance. 70,000 years ago, a world of fire and ice nearly erased us. Volcanoes darkened the skies. Glaciers swallowed the land. Predators prowled in every shadow. Our numbers dwindled to only a few thousand, scattered and fragile. At any moment, our story could have ended. And yet, it did not. From that narrow edge, humanity climbed back. We learned to spark fire from stone, to build homes from bone, to preserve food against the famine of winter. We crafted tools sharper than claws, shelters stronger than dens, clothes warmer than fur. We painted the walls of caves with visions of life, sang songs into the darkness, carved figures that carried hope through the storm. We endured not because we were the strongest, but because we were the most creative, the most cooperative. Is clear. Survival is not guaranteed. It must be earned through adaptability, through unity, through creativity. The same forces that nearly ended us once still surround us today. Shifting climates, fragile ecosystems, challenges we cannot always foresee. But the Ice Age taught us that even in the harshest trial, humanity can endure if we remember who we are. We are not here by chance alone. We are here because of fire and shelter, because of tools and memory, because of art and belief. We are here because our ancestors carried the weight of survival through storms and silence and endless cold. And so, as we stand in the warmth of the modern world, we carry their story forward. The Ice Age is gone, but its lessons remain. Creativity, teamwork, resilience. These are not just the keys to our past. They are the keys to our future. For we are, all of us, the descendants of the greatest survivors in history. We are the survivors.